This is the, when you come into a Tamil or a Dravidian temple, this is the standard architecture that we follow. This is known as a Gopuram. The Gopuram essentially means that it is shaped like a cow. So, it's shaped like the front of a cow with the horns going up, sloping up there. And except for a few temples built by the Cholas in the 12th century, in the 11th and the 12th centuries, where the tower is above the central deity, all other temples have the tower as a gateway, and what is above the deity is a very short tower. So that is known as a Vimana, what is above the deity, and this is called the Gopura. And it's only in 3 or 4 Chola temples that you find that the Vimana becomes the Gopura. Like for instance the Tanjavur temple, the Brihadishwara temple, the whole tower is on top of the deity himself, whereas here it's at the entrance. And the other thing that you need to remember is that if you come a little behind, you will find that there are metal urns on top of the temple tower. Yes. Yeah. And the number of windows on a tower will equal the number of urns on top. Oh. So you have 4 openings here, 1, 2, 3 and 4. You will find 4 urns on top. That is the same number. And I will not say that we invented electricity or we knew of it before Volta and Coulomb and other people. But the point is that somewhere the ancients had realized that the tallest structure in the village is the first thing to be struck by lightning. So the palm tree, for instance, would be the one most often struck by lightning. It would burn, and you will find a lot of burnt palm trees in all these areas. So the temple tower, right on top, they'll have these metal urns. And inside the metal urns, they'll fill them with rice and wheat grains and leave them there. So every 6 years or every 12 years, you're supposed to bring down the metal urn, and when you do so, you'll find that whatever is inside is completely charred. It's blackened, and you'll find that most of the urns have been damaged. So you protected the rest of the village from a lightning strike by putting up a metal urn right on top of over there, because the lightning would strike the metal urn. That was the thing. Yeah, they didn't know what it was, but they knew that there was a phenomenon which was happening and that it connected to metal, and so they had to put that up, which is why it is mandated in our Shastras, in Hindu, Tamil, in Dravidian temple Shastra, that you need to reconsecrate a temple at least every 12 years. The other thing is, so the reconsecration of a temple is called Kumbha Abhisheka. So the Kumbha, which is the urn that is on top, that is the most important function. So you remove the urn, you put a fresh urn, and then you anoint it with water. The priest will go right on top and pour water. People will watch it. So that's called Kumbha Abhisheka. So that is the reconsecration of the temple. You protected the surrounding village. And why do you build a tower of this height? Imagine that you're a traveler of the 14th or the 15th century, you're lost in the night, you don't know where to go, and then they'd light a flame on top of the temple tower. A lamp will be lit there. And that is to indicate that you need to come here, you'll find food and shelter of some kind, so come over to our village. So that is the temple tower. So this is the function. Remember that this entire thing is made of rock. So they would have got the granite and then they would have sculpted this entire temple. The temple dates itself to the 9th century. So it's one of the early Pandya temples. So as Mr. Subaya said yesterday, the Cholas, the Pandyas and the Cheras. These were the 3 great kingdoms that flourished for a long period of time, almost from the 7th century going on up to the 13th and 14th centuries. So each had, and each waxed and waned, and one became more powerful, the other ones lost out and so on. And they left their interest on much of the temples in this area. So this is very much a Pandyan temple, embellished by later kings. For instance, these monumental sculptures that you see, these are all from the Nayak period. These come from the 15th to the 17th century. So prior to that, this concept of building huge deities in standalone pillars really did not exist, except for the guardian deities to the main god who is in the sanctum. This is a symbol of Vishnu's discus, the chakra. Vishnu as a deity holds 5 weapons in his hands. So, Spurat Sahasrara Shikhati Tibram Sudarshanam Bhaskara Koti Tulyam Surat Visham Prana Vinashi Vishnu Chakram Sadaham Saranam Prapadye. 1 million suns, Sudarshanam Bhaskara Koti Tulyam. So that Sudarshana, which is like 1 crore suns and which has got sharp edges to it, Suradvisham Pranavinashi Vishnu. Suradvisham Pranavinashi, destroying the enemies of the gods. Vishnu Chakram Sadaham Prapadya. I worship that chakra, which is the weapon of Mahavishnu, that discus. So, in all Vaishnavite temples, you will find that there is a separate sanctum to the chakra. And in most of the temples where there is a chakra, if you go to the rear, you will find a Narasimha carved on the back side of the chakra.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't know if it is in this particular temple. The most magnificent one is in Srirangam. It's a huge, it's almost 9 feet or 10 feet, and on the back side you have a monumental Narasimha carved on it with a window to depict. You'll rarely find Tamil men without a moustache. And so here he is curling his moustache like that, preening himself almost. The Dravidian moustache is very important. Have you ever seen a Tamil without a moustache? So here he is preening himself, on his appendage. And there you have a hunter. And most likely, this will be the patron who built this mandapam. Very likely. Because he is shown here. You can actually see he's got a paunch. He's not in the best of shape, whereas all the others are idealized figurines. This one is, he's a little out of shape. So he is the person who most probably would have endowed this mantapam. And originally, they would have even carved his name on top to indicate who it is here, either there or here. With so many renovations happening over the years and sandblasting and all that, we don't know who this person is. But very likely he is the patron who endowed this particular thought. See, I don't like the British. I'm no supporter. I'm not a Raj apologist. Much of the epigraphy was done when they were around. Post that, we've had a lot of misguided attempts at temple renovation, and today it's become a menace because there's so much of money available that every time I see a temple becoming popular, it churns my gut. Because I know that they'll embark on a restoration with multicolored paint, and then they'll rub out everything that is there. This is controlled by the Archaeological Survey, so they don't do any of that over here. That's the whole thing.
Just one thing in your pictures is that probably these temples did have vegetable dye on stone.
Yeah.
Because if you look above that portal, you will see the remnants of original vegetable dye.
Yeah, they do. But the point is that today, a lot of it is polychrome and chemical. Simple goddess of this shrine. She is known as Uyyakonda Nachiyar and is also known as Ujjivana. That is she who gives life. So that is Mahalakshmi here. When you go inside, you'll find a seated Mahalakshmi, and she is known as Ujjivana. It's a beautiful name for a goddess, the mother who gives life. And then the deity, the main deity is known as Sathyamurthy. Sathyamurthy, the god who is truth. So that is the name, and this place is called Thirumeyyam. May in Tamil means truth. So in Sanskrit the deity is called Satyamurthi. In Tamil he is known as Meyyappan. And normally in a Shiva temple, you come back from the temple and then you prostrate yourself before this particular spot. In a Vishnu temple you do it first, you surrender to the deity and then go in. In a Shiva temple you come out and surrender and say, I have not taken anything of your temple, I am going away as empty handed as I came. So that's the difference between worshipping in a Shiva temple and a Vishnu temple. Because in Tamil, Shiva Sottu Kula Nasham. If you put your hand on Shiva's property, your family is destroyed forever. You cannot take away anything from Shiva. So similarly, in a Vishnu temple, you don't sit down after you leave, when you leave. In a Shiva temple, you sit down for a minute and then you leave, because you meditate on him and then you leave. In a Vishnu temple, if you sit, he'll take away whatever he gave you before you leave. All temple inscriptions written in Tamil, which give you the story of when the temple was built, which king gave what to the temple, which villager gave what to the temple. These are all inscriptions. And why do you know that it's Pallava period, 5th and 6th century? Because the crouching lion was very much a Pallava icon. They were the people who carved these Pallava, these in this style. Those are much later. This would probably be 19th or 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century. The lion and the lotus pedestal, this is very recent. But these are very, very ancient, both of them over here. And this is what the ancients carved their inscriptions on the temple wall. The modern horrors put up foundation stones like this right in the sanctum. And behind you, you will see Garuda, which is why you never stand on the step, because you block the sight of Garuda to Mahavishnu. So you come down and you stand either on this side or on that side. So what defines the 108 holy shrines? How many of you were awake at 11 o'clock yesterday?
Morning?
All of us.
Yeah, evening. And so what was it? What defines the 108 holy shrines?
Saints.
One of the saints.
One of the 12 saints should have come and written a verse over here. Sri Rangam is a temple where all the 12 composed, which is why Sri Rangam is the holiest of holies. The Tamil word for temple is Kovil. So if you tell a Vaishnavite Kovil, you mean Sri Rangam. If you tell a Shaivite Kovil, you mean Chidambaram. So these are the two holiest of holies for the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites. But here you had one saint, the last of the 12 saints, Thirumayam. He came here and he composed a set of verses on this temple. And what does he say? He says, Mayyar Kadalum, that ocean which is as dark as the kajal that people wear on their eyes. Manivarayum, a dark cave. Okay. Kar Mugilum, a dark cloud. Like that, I saw Meyyane, I saw that truth. I saw Mei Malayane, that deity who is standing or lying down next to that hill which is known as Meyyam, Thirumeyyam, the shrine of truth. Shangendum Kayyane, he who has got a conch in one hand. Him I came and saw over here. So that verse has got 4 lines, but I am abbreviating it to tell you. Then finally he says, Kai Thurada Kayyalla, that hand which does not rise in salutation before this deity, that is not a hand. It deserves to be forever in salutation. Him I have seen here. So when he mentions the location, imagine in the 8th or the 9th century, he's come, he's recorded this temple for us. And that is how we trace its antiquity. So between the 6th century and the 9th century, these bhakti saints have come, they have recorded in verse. Some places they even record the form of the deity. So all that is there. So imagine we have had a continuous tradition from the 7th and 5th, actually from the 7th century, really, if you look at it, and we know what they saw. And when we come here, we are again seeing what they saw. We are in the 21st century. They are not arranged in chronological order over here. These 3 are the first 3. Poihei, Bhudam and Pei, which is very strange names. Poihei means tank, Bhudam means ghost, Pei means spirit. So these 3 are the first Arvas, and we have no idea how they were born, who were their parents, we have no information. But they were the first 3 to travel, and there is this beautiful story of the first Arvar coming to a place called, a place in Kanchipuram, and there is a violent storm. And this is the first recorded story about the Arvars, and it's really beautiful. So the first Arvar comes, and there is a violent storm. He enters a chamber where one person can lie down. So he lies down, and then the second Arvar, Bhudat Arvar, comes and knocks on the door and says, it's raining heavily, let me in, let me in. So Poige Arvar says, one person can lie down, 2 people can sit down. So you come. So he comes in. Then after a short while, again the door knocks and Pei Arvar comes rushing in and saying, let me in because it's raining. So they say, all right, so one person can lie down, oruvar kidakkalam, iruvar amaralam, moovar nirkalam. 3 people can stand up. So all 3 are standing, and they find that there is a 4th being who is crushing them. And then they don't know who it is. So the first one produces the lamp of knowledge. The second one gives the oil of realization. And the third one lights it with his intellect. Wow. And they find that Vishnu is standing in their midst, because Vishnu is not able to overcome the temptation to be with his 3 great devotees. 3 of them coming together, and I am not there, so he goes and he crushes them. And what do they see first? They see Mahalakshmi on his chest. Thirumangai marries a woman called Kumudavalli. He's a king. He's a vassal king to the Pandyas, and he marries a woman called Kumudavalli who says, I'll marry you only on one condition, that you feed every Vaishnavite who comes to this kingdom. So Thirumangai starts feeding them. Soon the wealth is gone. He can't feed the people any longer, but Kumudavalli has told him that he has to feed everybody. So he becomes a brigand. He turns a dacoit and he begins to rob everybody who comes on the way, and with whatever money he gets out of it, he feeds the Vaishnavites. Then one day there is this beauteous being with his wife who comes on horseback, and Thirumangai goes and waylays them and says that, part with everything. So they begin to give away all their jewels to him, and then finally there is just the ring that is left on the woman's toe. And he says, part with that, and she says, I put it on the day I got married. I have never been able to remove it. So he says, can I bite it off? She says, all right. So the moment his lips touch her toe, he realizes that is Vishnu and Lakshmi who've come to test him. And he then becomes a realized soul and he travels. Thirumangai has done the most number of verses. So it's called Periya Tirumozhi. That is so many verses that is called the large holy set of verses. And then you've got Thirupan Alvar, who again is a beautiful story. He was an outcast and he couldn't enter the temple of Sri Rangam. He has composed only on Sri Rangam. He is not composed anywhere else. So in the Sri Rangam temple tank, he is on the river Kaveri, he is standing. He is singing of the Lord because his caste does not allow him to enter the temple.
What?
The priest, he is an outcast. So then, I'll tell you about it. The priest of the temple comes and he's so angry with Thirupan Alvar for standing there that he flings a stone on Thirupan Alvar and goes to the temple. When he goes to the temple in the sanctum, he finds that Ranganatha is bleeding. And then he asks the Lord, what have I done? What sin have I committed? He says, go and fetch him. How do I fetch him? Carry him on your shoulders and bring him. So Thirupan Alvar is escorted. So Thirupan Alvar is known as Munivahana because he is on the shoulders of a priest. Once he comes in, he merges with the Lord. So that is Thirupan Alvar. Then Kulashekara is a Kerala king who dedicates himself to Vishnu. And then Tondar Adipodi is a devotee who considered himself to be the slave of the devotees. He was not a devotee, he was a slave to the other devotees. So that is Tondar Adipodi. Periyalvar is holy. Periyalvar is the greatest of the Alvars for the simple reason that he is the father of Godha, who is the only woman among the 12 Alvars. Now Godha is not here. Where is Godha? We will see her on the way out. And then you've got Madhura Kavi. Madhura Kavi gets to know that there is somebody called Nammalvar seated in a tamarind tree. And he decides to go and visit Nammalvar. So he comes to this Alvar Tirunagari and sees the tamarind tree. He sees Nammalvar seated inside it. He worships Nammalvar and asks Nammalvar one question. If something is born in a dead body, where will it reside and what will it eat? And Nammalvar replies, it will reside there and it will eat that. So, Settathin Vayathil Ondru Pirandal, Yettai Thinnum Yengi Irukum, Attai Thinnum Angeye Irukum. That is, it will. So, the soul is born in a dead body. And what does it do? It lives there and it eats the body. So, this was Nammalvar's explanation. Madhura Kavi then becomes a realized soul. He composes, he's the one of the, again the versifiers. So, these are the 11. With Andal, they become 12. Now, the verses were all lost. And then you see the big idol of a man with his hands like that. That was Nada Muni, who came 100 years after the Alvars. And he resurrected the 4,000 great verses of the Alvars. These are known as the Nalayara Divya Prabandham. They are sung in Tamil. And when the deity comes out in procession in any Vishnu temple, these Tamil verses will be sung ahead of the deity. Sanskrit will be sung behind the deity. It is never in front. Tamil is always accorded a higher status in the Vishnu temples as compared to Sanskrit. So Vishnu is supposed to be so fond of the Tamil recitations that are going on that he rushes to hear them, and so they will walk much faster. So they'll keep reciting and they'll keep going ahead. Vishnu will be following them. The Sanskrit prayers will all come behind. So that is the status for Tamil. It is known as Dravida Veda. These Nalayara, these 4,000 verses are known as the Vedas which are in Dravidam in Tamil. Andal is only 7 or 8 and she determines that she will marry nobody except Mahavishnu himself. And so her father says that, what is this? How am I going to find out who it is? And he says, I will summon all the 108 to you. You identify which form of Vishnu you like. And then finally we'll give you in marriage to him. So everybody comes, and then Sri Ranganatha of Sri Rangam comes and she says, this is my Lord. So Vishnu, Periyalvar then says, all right, we have to make preparations for the wedding. And so Andal sets out in a palanquin all the way to Sri Rangam. And then Periyalvar says that, my daughter will vanish in the sanctum once she goes there. What am I going to do thereafter? So I have to have a wedding in my village. You have to prove that you've come and married my daughter in front of everybody. So Vishnu says, fine, I'll land up, no problem, arrange for the wedding. So Andal then does a vrat for 30 days, which we celebrate between December 15th and January 15th. Every day she composes a verse for the Lord. And then this is one set of verses. Then you've also got another set of verses called the Nachiyar Tirumozhi, which is composed by Andal. And there you find a completely different Andal. For instance, she says, what use are these voluptuous breasts if they have not been fondled by Vishnu? Let me cut them and cast them off, if he has not come to meet me. And that shows a woman who is completely emancipated and who knows what it is to be with a man. And that set of verses is a completely different set compared to the Andal who is in the first set of 30. So this is a woman in full blossom of womanhood who is yearning to unite with a man who is the Lord himself. So then the wedding happens, and then she merges with the Lord and she goes away. So that is the story of Andal. Andal is given status as one of the 12 great apostles. In the 16th century, you had a Vijayanagar king called Krishnadevaraya. How many of you have heard of him? Hampi ruler, the most powerful emperor of Vijayanagar, Krishnadevaraya. Krishnadevaraya gets a dream one night when Vishnu tells him, in the Tamil country, everybody knows the story of Andal. Nobody knows of it in Andhra country. Write my story of Andal in Telugu. So Krishnadevaraya composes this poem called Amukta Malyada, giver of the worn garland. That is the title. And it's one of the 5 great Telugu epics. And you should read it in English. I don't know how to read Telugu, most unfortunately, but it is a magnificent work. Magnificent work. And in that, you have a lot of humor. So, Andal is being taken by Periyalvar to Srirangam, and then, he describes the temple, and then he describes Andal holding her father's hand and rushing into the sanctum, and their father and daughter are falling at the feet of the Lord, and Vishnu is evaluating her beauty and says, yeah, she looks really good. Nice. And then, he decides to get married to her, and then they come back to Srivilliputtur to get married, and while the marriage is being conducted, she is supposed to take sesame seeds and drop it on the bridegroom's head. And when she does it, her fingers touch his neck, and shivers of excitement go all over Vishnu, and he sweats profusely in anticipation of what is going to happen after the wedding. It is just a wonderful epic, the Amukta Malyada. Even in English, it is so magnificent, I don't know what it will be like in Telugu. Someday I hope I'll learn it and I'll be able to read it in its original. So that is the story of Andal, the maiden who unites with the Lord. So, because the temple will give rise to a village, and then the village has to be sustained by means of water. So the first thing that will be done is to build the temple tank, test it, divine it for water. Having done that, if you find that it's got a good source of water, you start work on the temple. Otherwise you abandon the place and you move on to look for another location. So he says that in the month of Baisakh, which you should be definitely knowing about, on Purnima day, all the rivers come here, and this is considered to be very holy. Ganga, Yamuna, they all come here. And on that day, if you come and bathe in this tank, all your sins. On that day, the water level rises, he says, automatically, and people come here and bathe to absolve themselves of all their sins. And this tank is very uniquely structured. It's got 8 openings. Normally you will only find rectangular or circular tanks, and then you also find crescent shaped tanks in a few temples, like for instance in Srirangam you have a crescent shaped tank. This is very unusual, where you have an octagonal tank, 108 steps leading down collectively, and with the 8 guardian deities of the 8 directions given temples on the 8 sides, and underneath he says there are 1008 salagramas in the water. These are Vishnu rocks, stones that signify Vishnu. So for instance, any orthodox home, you will not have Vishnu in the form of an idol. You will have him in the form of a black stone, a shapeless stone, which you get from a place very much in the north of India called Salagrama. You go there and then you get it from the river there and you bring it back. The crustaceans would have carved various shapes on that stones. And so some of them will be circular, some of them will be shaped like a conch, some of them will have a small marking. The orthodox Vaishnavites will know which aspect of Vishnu is depicted in that Salagrama. And certain violent aspects you won't keep at home. For Narsimha and all that, you return back to the river if you get it, because you can't keep it at home. It demands a certain level of orthodoxy that you cannot really have. For instance, our house, we have 3 salagramas which have come down to us over generations, and every day morning it is compulsory to anoint the salagrama. You have to pour water on it and do puja to it. I do it because my father passed away last year. And when we come away, for instance, like when I have come away with you, the puja doesn't happen. So what you do is you take crystals of sugar and you keep a bowl of rice, uncooked rice of course, add a little bit of raw lentil to it, and you place the salagrama inside that bowl, and then you come away. And then when you go back, you pick it out of it, and then you do the puja. So that is how you continue. Sometimes children are not there, or children will not be interested in continuing the worship any longer. You then hand over the salagrama to a local mutt or a holy establishment, where you find in some mutts, you will find hundreds of salagramas are worshipped every day. Some places even with a hose pipe they'll water it all in the morning, because they've just got it with so many donations happening over the years. People just, and if you feel that that is not appropriate, you take it back to the river and fling it in, hoping that somebody will someday pick it up and use it. So, my children are much modern, and then, they are living elsewhere. So even though I'm still relatively young, I get plagued by these doubts. So I once asked a holy personage, as what should I do? I don't know if my children will really follow all this. So he said, first of all, why do you even assume that they may not? At a certain age, they may turn around and come back, and they may take it up. Then secondly, he said, in case you don't find that, then fling it into the river. Then I said, what will happen to the salagrama? He said, is God going to be protecting you, or are you protecting the God? Just don't worry about him. He's carried on happily over centuries without your help.